This is a great day. We have a great group here and a great distinguished speaker. But I was looking at Charles' bio last night. I was reminded that we've known each other for about 30 years. I won't tell you the story about the first time we met. If you want to know about that, I'll tell you afterwards. He earned his bachelor's degree in administration from Virginia State University right down the road in Petersburg, and his master's degrees in public administration from Central Michigan. He's a Chippewa, and military studies from Marine Corps University. He served as the Assistant Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations G43, 5, and 7, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations G3 for the United States Army Materiel Command, Commander of the 8th Theater Sustainment Command, Chief Logistics Officer for the United States Forces Korea, and Commander of Defense Logistics Agency Troop Support, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And on 3 separate occasions, he's held commands in Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Please join me in welcoming my good friend, Lieutenant General Charles Hamilton. You know, Charles, I have a series of questions that I want to ask you, but do you have any opening comments since you are the host, hosting you today? Anything specific you want to talk about?
Yeah, Les, just I want to say thanks to everybody for coming out. This is a pretty big crowd. General Brown met me out front and he gave me a warning. He said, hey, we got a pretty good crowd in there. As I was walking in, the one thing that stood out is that I know probably most of you here. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but just means I'm an old guy. This is true. That's the shorter cut to cut the grades out. But one, I just want to say thanks for coming out. It's important, and you're going to hear me talk about that with potentially some of the questions that Les asked me this morning, because there are some must-dos that we've got to get to in the next few years to be ready, 2030, 2040, basically in the future. They're must-dos. They have to happen. And at the end of the day, they can't happen in a vacuum, just talking to ourselves. It's got to be academia, and industry is a huge part of that. And we've even more so than ever got to shore up those relationships and give you the predictability to make investments for the future. We've got to come up with new ways, new innovative, nuanced ways to do that. And so I'll stop there, or I'll probably run over time already. So
you're good. Okay, first question. So as I ask these questions, I want everybody to think about questions to ask when I finish these questions here. So first question, Charles. World War II was one dominated by logistics, as our sustainment force buildup in the European theater alone spanned nearly half of the war. While logistics must remain our competitive advantage, how will this delivery change for the future fight?
Yeah, so, one of my heroes is sitting in the room that I learned a ton from. And he gave me lots of rope when he was my commander, and that's General Brown. He was the AUSA commander. In fact, he gave me so much room. He said, hey, Charles, you go and do what you got to do. And I think it was 3 months, he called me and he goes, hey, you haven't checked in. And he was right. As a true story, but Indo-PACOM is so huge that I was literally all over the map, as you could imagine. And that old, say you hear, you get tyranny of distance. You get, well, it's real. And not just even the tyranny from where you sit right here to get there. Once you get there, you still got a large AOR to cover down on. And General Brown, just real quick, just say thanks for what you do. You're in General Ham before you and making this happen. Thanks for letting me come out here today. So in the future, what we anticipate is that the operational environment is just going to be totally different. You're going to send out units that are going to be smaller. They're going to be dispersed, and they're going to be disconnected. And so what that means to the sustainment community, a couple of things. Keyword, disconnected. So they're not going to be able to say, hey, Charles, we need, X, Y, Z. So, and you're going to hear me talk more a little later about predictive and precision logistics. Again, those must-dos, must-haves that we really got to get to. There's another hero out here that really started us on this path years ago that I got to watch as a young captain when I worked for him in the Ops Center, and then later on, just in various assignments, and that's General Mitch Stevenson one of our former G4s, great logisticians, that really started us on this path and really made us pay attention. I don't know if he was trying to or not, to data, right? Because one, obviously he believed in it, even from a very rudimentary level, as he may have sent out emails at dark 30 in the morning to make sure we were paying attention. But in many other ways in our systems and getting us to, from the various systems that we had. So data is going to play a huge role in the next major operation. And as you heard me mention, so those units are going to be out there, not alone and afraid. There's going to be lots of sensors and lots of things going on, but they can only carry what they can carry. So therein lies the precision. Therein lies, think about this. So a unit's out, so I want you to visualize, because I didn't bring any slides. A unit's out, and I've got to know exactly when they're going to need to be resupplied. Now, what you've got to envision is, what you probably envision, like had convoys showing up, meeting them along the way, at a grid coordinate, resupply, move out. Maybe not in the future. It may just be some supplies on the ground with some sensors. And then I've got to get that unit out of there. It's just too many things moving, too many opportunities to be seen, and too many fires. And so that's what the new battlefield is going to look like. So data and predictive and precision are must-dos, for our Army today. There will be no big buildups like we had in World War II. The Joint Strategic Support Area, which I talk about a little later, where you sit right now, will play a huge role in that. But, kind of going back, like in this area, the defense industrial base, the organic industrial base, that's where you have the buildups. So again, more importantly, that we be very precise and predictive in the future. And then the last thing I'll talk about is that what's really driving us, with this next fight, as I mentioned when I opened, is the modernization piece. And that's really, I can't overemphasize, and you'll hear me go back to it many times. You got to beat down our doors like you normally do. You've got to get on our calendars. You've got to show up at events like this. And eventually, with the systems that we have, the systems that you bring us, it's going to work. I have complete confidence. We're already headed in the right direction. Spent 2 hours with Joan Daly and Jim Hoyle, who's in here right now, last night. And this is all we talk about. When I'm sitting with the Secretary of the Army or the Chief, I don't care where we start, the conversation comes back to sustainment. Everyone understands it's the center of gravity and how important it is. And that gives us momentum, and momentum leads to resources, and that leads to you playing a huge role in what we do.
Thanks, Charles. So that center of gravity, that's a key point. So let's jump to the next question. So what information and lessons learned have we gathered from Russia's invasion of Ukraine from February to today?
Well, we've learned a ton. I think, once we saw the invasion happen, natural human instinct, we did some Monday morning quarterbacking, right? And said, wow, the number 2 Army got out the gate and got bogged down. Fuel, maybe they picked the wrong time of year to jump out there, whole bunch of things, et cetera. On Tuesday morning, we were checking our own traps, looking at our own doctrine, looking at our own gaps, making sure that we had the calculations right to make sure that we could support, our maneuver forces and joint forces as well around the globe. What's key is they were, supporting really from their own border, and we're having difficulty in doing that. So where you sit in the Joint Strategic Support Area, in Hamilton's opinion, is the center of gravity for the next fight. And you're seeing that play out right now in open source as you watch how we support, Ukraine. So we're not at war, but some would consider wartime footing with the amount of production and how we're supporting and moving things around the globe. So the DIB, the Defense Industrial Base, and the OIB, the Organic Industrial Base, have to be postured even more so in the next big fight. And so as we speak, there's a 15-year modernization strategy to make that happen. We've got the dollars to do that now. and we're starting to modernize our depots and arsenals. In fact, I visited Waterville a couple of months ago, and as they were, making the tubes in support of the effort in Ukraine, right alongside them was the modernization effort. I mean, really in stride that they're doing this to get the right type of machinery to do the tooling that we need to continue and build out that production line even faster. So again, it's about those relationships, those trusted partnerships that will give you the predictability to make the decisions that you make. One thing you can count on for sure, it's going to be a large scale fight, which means it's going to be fought across all domains. And what we're doing on the sustainment side, we're reworking our doctrine a little bit to really be more data centric. We've actually started a course at Fort Lee. It's not a pilot. The course has started to retrain our force to be more data centric. The secretary said it in her 6 objectives. We have to have a more data centric force, just not sustainment. And then when you think of that, all these systems and sensors, we go, sensor, shooter, and now it's sensor, shooter, sustainment. It has to be connected. So someone showed me a piece of kit, and it was a great piece of kit. And it kind of resupplied some things at the tactical level. And in my mind, what I wanted to know was that piece of kit connected and could feed all the way back to where you sit in the Joint Street Support area and tell us, if something was happening at the tactical edge, they had their resupplies, you work all the way back, but inform a decision back here. That's the speed that we're going to need in the next fight. It's going to be intellectual capital, it's going to be chess, and who's the fastest? Who can take that data and not just let it inform a past reality, but inform a reliable decision at speed? That's what we're going to need.
Okay, good, great. One more question before we open it up. Where and how can industry and academia best provide their expertise as the Army postures itself to deliver logistics around a dispersed and contested environment? Specific things that industry can think about.
Oh yeah, I got a couple. So, and I'm not ashamed to say this. What I'm going to do is describe to you what I think predictive and precision logistics look like in very rudimentary, non kind of IT. I got a business degree, so you already, you got my resume, right? So, and then I think it's up to you to take what I say, that vision, that thought, and then come back to us and say, hey, we have something that we think meets that, right? And can help us move this along. So on the predictive side, what that looks like is as something is happening at the tactical point of contact, and I'll give you an example. If we lose an ammunition supply point, for instance, you name the location, there are certain things that are going to happen when inside that AOR. It's going to automatically go to black. Inside the theater, they're going to start moving supplies and ammunition to that point to get it back to maybe an amber status. What happens now is there's a bunch of meetings, still, General Stevenson, that happen in between that incident and me from this area moving something to affect change. Boards, bureaus, meetings that equal what? Time that we don't have. In Hamilton's mind, what's got to happen when that's happening, something's going to happen at the operational level, but at this level, it's going to say, Charles, you have 20 aircraft at you name the airbase with class 1. Here are your options. You have 10 days of supply of class 1 in theater right now. So just a conveyor belt mentality of moving supplies. Or you can take those 20 aircraft of lift, offload, and put the different variants of ammunition that you need to get them back up to a green status in you name the hours. Now think about if I let those 20 aircraft take off because they're waiting for me or some other person to sit at the end of a table to make that decision. That's a lot of time. Now, there's a lot of variables that go into the AI part of it, you know better than me, machine learning part of that, you know better than me, that are gonna help inform and give me options to very quickly make a decision. But if I'm waiting on a phone call, if I'm waiting on an email, if I'm waiting on a meeting, those 20 aircraft are gonna take off and I've lost that lift capability. So I've gotta be very predictive, I gotta be nimble, I've gotta be agile. Precision goes more at the tactical point of contact. As most of you know, we've gone back to a division-centric Army. We used to have this debate all the time. As a young officer, it was fun to watch the senior leaders have this debate about BCTs and divisions. And here we're back to divisions. So they only got so much lift that they can move around with. So we've got to be very precise on what they take out to support their operations. And the good news is we built a core of logisticians, sustainers, that are really operators in disguise as sustainers. We are inside the wire on operations. As most of you know, in combat, we support multiple operations at the same time. We just don't make too big of a deal about it. But I remember a certain division commander walking in my talk down range, and he goes, wow, first of all, your talk's bigger than mine. And two, you're coming down on all these operations, because he thought, which is rightfully so, that I was only focused on him. And that's the art and science of what we do. Because you are a priority division commander, but oh, by the way, I'm supporting 4 2-stars right now, but I want to make you feel like I'm only supporting you. So again, you've got operators, posing as sustainers that really inside the wire on these operations and how they work. And now that we've got the technology, I've watched it out at Project Convergence, even at the tactical level, that will give you several options that has taken all the log planner stuff that we've used over the years on steroids now, because it's got to be a speed. So I've given you just a couple of things really, which are big, that are, guess what? Those are must-dos that I gave you. They will happen. They have to happen in the future for us to be successful.
That's great. Thanks. So let's open it up to the audience. So wait until Alex comes up and ask you a question. Tell us who you are first, and then your question.
Good morning, sir. I'm Nelson Gonzalez with EdgeSource Corporation. Sir, for question for you, EdgeSource Corporation is actually counter UAS, and with the rise of UAS in the battlefield, do you see the use of drones conducting resupply flights to units out there in the future?
Yes, I do. We are working a couple of programs now to get exactly what you're talking about. And so we will have sensors and drones that will do. In fact, the Marines have a program that we're looking at right now. And so obviously it's not a lot of supplies, right? But it takes a soldier, a human being out of harm's way. And if we take a loss on the piece of kit that's out, that's acceptable risk and loss. But yes, in the future, I think you will even see more of that as that technology even gets stronger and advances.
Hi, sir. Ashley Roki with Breaking Defense. Which Marine Corps program were you talking about?
I don't know because I got to look at it in a fairly classified environment. And so what I'm willing to say about it is that it's just a program that allows drones to maneuver around maneuver space and deliver a small amount of supplies.
Great. And then another question. In October, the secretary said that she tapped General Daly and AMC to lead an effort to look at ways to strengthen capabilities in the Indo-Pacific region. Could you sort of fill us in on insights of what that looks like, the timing of it, maybe initial insights of what you're learning at this point?
Hey, very good question. Yeah, General Smith has a very good question, and it is. So having served in that theater, a few years over my career, we are doing a few things. And really, it comes down probably to 3 things: access, presence, and then influence. And so the key is, probably at the OSD level, we really got to work through the partnerships. once we work through that, and Jim Flynn's, he's doing a phenomenal job, with the different partners in INDOPACOM. Once the partnerships work, then we can get that access that we need. And then we could bring in, some of our APS supplies potentially. We can work in some of our humanitarian efforts as well that go along with that. And then as some of you know, we've got the Army watercraft out there as well that we use on a fairly routine basis. It doesn't get a lot of play in the media, et cetera, but obviously those watercraft play a huge role in INDOPACOM. And one of the must-dos that we must have for the future is we've got to modernize that fleet, as you could imagine. It's it's a few centuries old, and it's going to play a huge role, in MDO, multi-domain operations in INDOPACOM.
Hi, Matt Baynard, Defense Daily. At the end of your remarks, you mentioned Project Convergence 22. So I wanted to, follow up and ask, what sort of specific, areas did you want, work on during that experiment related to logistics, and how did that extend into, maybe conversations with the international partners there about how you can work together for future logistics-related efforts? Thank you.
So one big effort kind of on the international partner side that I got to see personally while I was there was in the area of additive manufacturing. And we were working an effort, and they were working an effort as well. And what we found out is that they perhaps were a little bit ahead of us in this area. They were able to do some things at a little larger scale, and also cut down on the time as well. So we were able to partner with them doing that, extended, a few months period of time before we actually got to the session where they were doing the outbrief. And I think that was a huge win. We partnered with this particular country, and we're looking at their technology as we speak to perhaps use here in our force in the United States Army.
Good morning, General Hamilton. John Morgan, IBM. And I want to follow up with the discussion about the Pacific, the Secretary's recent, Secretary Austin's recent discussions with the Australian Prime Minister, and specifically about the defense and organic industrial base. 15-year program that the Army is looking at about how to expand and enhance the OIB. What are the challenges that you see moving forward with bringing capabilities to a theater that you lived in across the Pacific with respect to expanding the OIB?
Joe Morgan, good to see you. Again, many mentors, people I work for that are here. Good to see you. So a couple of things I think with that. One, it kind of goes to the question we had earlier about presence and access. And so although the OIB and the defense industrial base, we've got to put them in a better position to posture and deliver at scale, almost like a World War II footing, if you will, with the amount of volume. But if you think about World War II, that was a long, and perhaps the next war will be long and protracted as well, but it took a while to get to that. We feel that in this next fight, with all the fires and technology, that's just too long. So in working with our partners, and you mentioned Australia and their organic, and not just even Australia, other countries as well, we look into all supply chains. We look at all, OIBs, which most countries may not have a robust OIB as the United States, but we do look at all of their capabilities, as you can imagine, to support us at scale. But part of that is really going to be, what do we have, forward, just like we did in Europe. It played a huge role. In fact, if you look at it, Europe is the model that we're going to overlay for INDOPACOM. And that's why John Flynn's working so hard. He's saying, hey, I need some of those capabilities forward in my theater. And then where the DIB and the OIB comes in is to really reinforce that at scale and at speed. I can't overemphasize the speed in this next fight that we've got to get to because of the technology and the amount of fires that we have out there.
Any final questions?
Morning.
Morning.
Since I'm an old ordnance officer and know that, part of maintenance and supplies, goes together in logistics, I do want to be or hear what we're working on in the way of maintenance and more specifically, and innovations and all of, along those lines.
So great question, and Hale State, Virginia State grad there, thanks. Again, lots of folks I know in the room, obviously. I didn't plan them here, sir, I promise. But, I mentioned this, and I think it was to a couple of folks I have in the room, Joe Hoyle and Joe Donahue, yesterday. I said, maybe a couple of days ago, I said, do we have to revolutionize the way we do maintenance in the Army now? We all grew up, Monday morning, how we did maintenance could have been every day, for 13 Bravo as an enlisted soldier. But I'm not sure if sometimes we over-maintained. There's been some talk of that. Now a lot of our, chassis and things that come with this new modernization have sensors on them. And I think we've got to take advantage of that and let that feed into, what we used to call, CBM, or predictive maintenance now, and let that, play out. Do we need to change the oil every, 6 months or have a service just because we said it did when we haven't moved it out of motor pool maybe but 2 times? I don't know. But I really do think we've got to relook the whole program. We've got this real cool thing out there I will share with you that's working out of Army Futures Command, out of their software lab. And that's a PMCS application that goes on your iPhone. And it's got all the stuff there that we used to include all the forms and, TMs, et cetera, to do your PMCS. And then what we're working on now is how that's going to connect to all our systems. So obviously it gets the parts on order and you maintain a record, et cetera. So we're getting really good feedback from some of our younger generations on that. It's a little less cumbersome than carrying your manual down and keeping up with all that and making sure the form get dropped in the inbox and somebody's got to manually input it, et cetera. So that's a little part of the innovation. And that predictive part that I talked about, the prognostic, preventive maintenance, that's a part of that. Supply, maintenance, it all feeds into being very predictive. And just think about the capability. If a commander on the battlefield has that capability at echelon to know that in 30 days, 2 weeks, that something potentially is going to break, or it needs a type of service, or it needs a couple of parts changed out. That's huge. That's a game changer.
Okay, sir, if there are no other questions from the audience, if it's okay, can I have the last question?
Sure.
As one of the sustainment enterprise's senior leaders, what tends to keep you up most at night?
It could be a few things. I'll try to rattle off a few. One that you probably read about or heard about, supply chain became a big word this last few years that everybody wasn't rolling off their tongue, prior to COVID. If we probably Googled it, it probably became one of the most used words during that time because we just blamed everything on supply chain. When I think about it, 10, 20 years way past my ETS date. I think about those secondary supply chains that support some of the larger platforms that we use in the Army. And I think about, how do we look at that? How do we ensure that we don't have failure in the future by ensuring that we have the right minerals, the right parts, the right, et cetera, to do what we need to do. So supply chain optimization, I think is huge. And how do we do that? I also think about protection. I've always told many forces I've served with, look, I'm all about delivering supplies. I'm all in, but you got to survive first. And so how do we, as sustainers, change our doctrine and mindset about protection. In many cases, I'm not going to have a protection force when I'm out, delivering supplies. So I've got to really think about how do I use deception, not just from like a tactical point of contact, but even here where we sit. A lot of us work together and we do it on Nipper. That's how I communicate with you, on Nipper. That's how I order supplies. So not hard for potentially somebody to get in that and take a look at that. So what I need your help is to think of ways to that we can be more deceptive in our operations, even from an industry standpoint. How do you protect your systems more so I can protect mine? Because in a lot of cases, they're intertwined, and we do a lot of communications that way. And then the two I talked about, they don't quite keep me up at night because I know we're going to get there. They're must-dos. And I can't say it enough, and I'll say it one more time: predictive and being precise. Just think of precision fires. Sustainment on target. It's got to happen.
That's good.
Very
Thanks.
good. Thank you, sir. Let's give General Hamilton a big round of applause.
So I know we have a couple minutes. I want to ask you one more question. And this is
That was the last question. What are you doing? I see.
No, so this is not on the script. So we talk a lot about recruiting and retention in the Army. So can you tell the audience what the Army did for you and why you think it's so important for us to continue to recruit people that look and operate and have your background in the Army?
Wow, that's a great question. Anyway, I was trying to avoid saying that's a great question doing this, but that was all of them were great. But that's a really great question. So a couple of things, and I got to say this, and I meant to say it in one of my thoughts earlier. This is really all about leadership. And, I was looking over here at, Sergeant Major of the Army, and I thought about our non-commissioned officer corps, talk about the difference with Russia. That's huge, is that we have that corps to lean into, and they're so talented, and our young officers are, just bursting with leadership. We've seen them do this many times, whether you go back to Desert Storm or, work your way all the way up to many operations now. But also, if you think about it, our force is so diverse of thought, right? Diverse in ethnicity, diverse in gender. That's what really makes us such a great, Army. We were talking about this yesterday, and about 80% of the young soldiers that are serving across our force have some tie already to the military. They're our kids, they're our cousins, they're our nieces, our nephews, et cetera. They go to church with us, et cetera. So it's not a bad thing, but we've really got to get that soldier for life, all of you in here, most of you, message out to the field that's going to re-inspire the nation and our young folks to want to come in, and serve. So there's a bunch of variables I could rattle off on probably why they're not coming in right now. We did some comparisons, and we can see some, empirical data that shows trends over time, and how, what inspires individuals to come in. I think I read this somewhere that we're going to go back to the be all you can be to inspire that a lot of us grew up on. I can't wait to see how they're going to take that old commercial and translate it into the new one, right? I'm trying to get a spoiler and see what that looks like. But I'm inspired really, Les, every day when I, even look in the audience here, or I see, the young officers and NCOs in the room, or the ones that follow me around or have to. I mean, they got this.
Yeah.
They're really smart. And sometimes they have to remind me, which is really good. I love the pushback. Sir, you got to listen. Because sometimes, we're just ready to go fire, right? And, but they're ready as well. And they bring a lot of talent. And to retain that talent, we've got to listen to what they say. Hey, Ranger, good to see you back there. Okay.
All right, let's give him another round of applause.
That's right. That's really the last question there.
That is the last question.
Okay, great. All right, thanks.